I left the door open for 5 minutes and look who's here. You can't stay here. I have to go. Morning everybody, welcome back to another race day video. We are in West Sussex, specifically about 5 miles north of Chichester. Over my shoulder, over here, is the Goodwood horse racing course, and somewhere over there is the Goodwood motor racing course. So I have come early. Unlike most races where I travel the day before, I've actually decided to travel on the morning of this race because it doesn't start until 2:30, or at least my time. Getting a nice leg stretch walk in, which will take me about 20 minutes or so, while I'm drinking my coffee, and then I'll do my proper warm-up. Also gives me a chance to check out the course. This course is a whopping 1.5 kilometers at just over 5%. I know what you're thinking, that's not a climb, but first part is a little bit steep, so there's a little bit of a gradient on this climb, but it's very early on. However, I don't know if you can tell, the wind muff is doing a good job today, but it's very windy. We've got kind of like a cross headwind, but I don't know if you can tell, the hedgerow is quite tall. For illustration purposes, this is how high the hedge is. So I was kind of thinking that this climb would be a great opportunity for me to try out like my short term power. I was kind of like thinking in the car on the way down, like, oh, I'm gonna pace it, like I'm gonna be, I'm obviously gonna empty the tank, but I'm not gonna go like as hard as I can early on. But now that I've looked at the climb and I can see like how shallow it is for like the majority of it, and that first section skews the whole gradient, I'm just gonna go for it. Do you know what? I'm just gonna absolutely go for it. I'm gonna empty the tank and I'm just gonna see if I can hang on and see where that power settles, you know, when I do actually get to that point where I'm like, when's this gonna end? When's this gonna end? I'm also gonna use this opportunity to shout out the hill climbs that I've got coming up over the next couple of weekends, being that most of you are here and you're watching this. So I'm gonna be doing, next weekend I'm gonna be doing 2 hill climbs. I'm gonna be doing one on Saturday, one on Sunday. It'll be Mamnick and it'll be the Snake Pass. Both of them are in the Peak District, so if you're around that area, come and say hello. The week after that, I think it's the Ramsbottom Rake, which is up Manchester way, super steep. It even has a handrail for people to like walk up on the pavement, it's that steep. And then the week after that is Prospect Hill in Newcastle, which I'm actually quite excited for. And then it's the National Championship. So just giving you a bit of a refresh, being that you're all here hopefully watching this video. I must confess, I'm weirdly more excited than usual for today's hill climb. And I think it's got a lot to do with this short, really short duration, like, because it's the first one, and because there's not like, I think there's only 25 riders entered this race today, because Monsell Hill Climb is on up north, and a couple of other big ones as well. So there's not a big field, and there's also like not the same riders that you'd expect, you know, from a depth of quality perspective. That's not to put anyone down who's entered this, by the way. That's just, you know, there's nobody here from that like top level, if you know what I mean. So I'm strangely itching to get going and learn from it already, because I know there's lots to be learned, and there's so many weekends now until the Nationals, and I feel like every weekend is going to be like I'm gonna be feeling like this, you know, whether or not I perform well or not, because it's something that I'm just like turning a screw into something that I'm fundamentally not as great at getting my head around as the longer ones. The group set, I'm going to put a 1x system on tomorrow. You'll see that in a video for sure this coming week. And I haven't done other things, like I haven't changed my tyres and put my race tyres on. I'm still running like my bog standard training tyres. But I'm also like running the GoPro just because I still want to learn from stuff, at least until we get closer to nationals, and then I'll stop running the GoPro, unfortunately. Today's climb is probably going to be big ring, even that bit at the bottom where it's a little bit steep. And even though it's like a cross headwind and then a full-on headwind near the top, I still think because the gradient is like about 3%, a big ring will be fine. My big ring is a 52 tooth, by the way. But hopefully I'm going to channel my inner puncher today and pull a good effort out of the bag. I've actually reached out to a couple of brands, components-wise, to see if they'll get behind me over the next couple of weeks, because it'll be great to be able to save a couple of 100 grams here, there, and everywhere with things. As I'm sure you're aware, this bike currently weighs about 7.2. So yeah, fingers crossed that that we can work together with some other component brands, because not just to try win and reclaim that national title, but obviously all the content that comes with it, and you know, into next year. I am rider number 23, so I'm off 23 minutes past 2. I am last rider off. I've actually ridden the course now and nothing has changed my mind. I'm gonna go all guns blazing from the bottom. I'm just gonna literally try and hang on as much as I can to the top, because I'm here to push myself. Right, I'm back. 8 hours in a car and a 3-minute hill climb, or 3.5 minutes. I've driven 400 miles today. Anyway, let's have a debrief. So, a couple of positives, and I think the biggest positive is, for one, I won the event. Yay! Although they somewhat become like almost just ticking the boxes because it's on the way to something bigger. At least that's how I think, like, and that's how I thought when I was building up to my national championship win a couple of years ago. It was just a case of like going through a process and ticking off the wins, or ticking off the performances in this case. So, big positive from this ride today. So we all know that the climb started with a steep bit at the start, and then it gradually got flatter. So I was going into it with like, I'll just go from the bottom at a manageably hard pace, and then if I die off, I die off, and I'm just gonna commit to it and see if I can just hold on to something at the end. My power was a little bit down on my local hill climb that I do, which is also 3.5 minutes, give or take. But the big difference is that this hill climb was a lot flatter. So being able to produce the power on a flatter gradient versus a steeper gradient, you all know how hard that is. And in the conditions that we had today, which as you can see was wet and wild, I'm pretty chuffed with that. So on my actual power graph, you can see like I started like with my most power, like I put out, I think it was 510 watts or about 8.5 watts per kilo for the first minute and a half, because that was the steepest part of the climb. And then after that, we had around about 2 minutes where the gradient like really dropped off. And because of that, I was kind of like, the gear was running away. And the second half was a lot harder, not because I'd done that effort initially, but because the gradient was slacking off so much. The bike was running away from me, and it was like you're trying to keep up with the speed of the bike. You're trying to produce, 500 watts, which I was targeting, like, let's try and sustain this for as long as possible, let's try and hold on. And it wasn't happening because the bike was running away from me. The speed was getting up and up and up. We started to creep into like 20 mile an hour again. And doing 20 mile an hour, as you imagine, it's more and more difficult to produce that power the faster you're going. So what's really interesting about this race today is that, when I do a hill climb that has a steep gradient and it's consistent the whole way and there's none of this leveling off stuff, I wonder if it'll be the case that I'll be able to sustain a bit of a smoother or a little bit better power duration for the duration. I think as well, given that like I was thrown a little bit of a curveball today from multiple angles, so having the rain that came down like just before I started, the headwind obviously makes things like much more grim, and it was like 20 mile an hour with gusts. Also like driving 4 hours to get there, and then just doing my standard warm-up, but still feeling like fairly okay after that 4 hour drive. Obviously not feeling that great now, but it's like it's part of like a learning process so that like every week we get closer to the national championships, we learn something else. And because this is my first short hill climb, we are now treading like new land, treading new water. So yeah, thank you so much for watching Blazing Saddles. Thank you for the hill climb. It was well worth it. We've taken another one off. On to the next one.